Welcome to the Wingate Way. In this episode, I sat down with Michelle Caddigan. She talked about what it was like growing up in a military family, her time here at Wingate, both as a head coach of the softball team and now as an athletic director. And you will not want to miss what she wants her legacy here at Wingate to be. Tune in for this episode. Coach Caddigan, welcome to the Wingate Way.
Thank you,
It's an absolute pleasure to have you. I've been looking forward to this one.
Well, I'm looking forward to it too.
Well, thank you for being here. So how was your summer?
Summer was great. An unexpected trip came about. I was able to go to the World Cup in France. I also was able to take my regularly planned vacation where I went to the beach in Destin in Florida, and also went to the lake over the 4th of July. So I've had a really fun and also relaxing summer.
Okay. Tell us about the France trip, the World Cup. How was that?
Amazing. Much better than I think I could have even expected. I actually know somebody on the team, and her mom, when she made the roster, said, "Hey, I'm going to be there for 5 weeks. Come, stay with me. I'll get you tickets, and I'll get you on the family bus, and it'll be great." And so I was able to do that kind of last minute, and it was just unbelievable.
Which player is that, and what's the relationship?
Allie Krieger, she's a defender. Yes, before I came to Wingate, I taught at the high school at home where I grew up, and her father worked with me in the physical education and health department, and her mother was the PE teacher at the elementary school. So we kind of, for 6 years, were similar to Wingate. We were very close, and we spent a lot of time together. And so I knew Allie since she was like 6. So I watched her grow up, and this was her 3rd World Cup. Hadn't been able to make it to any of the others, so it was definitely an experience of a lifetime.
Well, it sounds like it.
Yeah, it's great.
That's pretty cool.
You can appreciate that.
Of course I can appreciate that. I'm a little bit jealous.
There you go.
I wish you had the opportunity to extend the invitation to close friends.
I know. Well, they're coming to Charlotte, so of course a lot of people are asking about that now as well. So,
there we go.
Yeah,
well, I'm not even debating. I'm on pole position now.
There you go. Yes, you are. You're number 1.
So where are you from? And you talked about, growing up and seeing Ali grow up. Where was that?
Sure. Most of my life I grew up in Northern Virginia. My dad was in the Army, and so actually the last stop for him was in Virginia. He worked at the Pentagon. So yeah, I spent probably from about 3 on until through college.
Wow. And how was that growing up, being a part of a military family and growing up in that atmosphere and environment?
It was, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was, it was all that I knew, but when I look back on it now, it was very structured. There was a lot of discipline. There was a lot of expectations. But I think that's kind of who made me who I am today, being raised in that environment. So it was pretty special.
Yeah. Siblings, what's the family dynamic?
Siblings, I'm the youngest of 4.
Oh, wow.
3 older brothers.
Okay.
I now have 5 nieces and nephews. And 5 great nieces and great nephews. My brothers were a lot older than me.
Okay. And how was that growing up with 3 older brothers? I'm sure they were super protective and.
They were super protective. They could terrorize me, but nobody else could. So they definitely were the older brothers who definitely. Made me feel like the little sister very often.
Well, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And then being the only girl, who do you feel spoiled you most between your mom and dad?
That's a good question. I think I was spoiled. My brothers were 6, 7, and 8 years older than me, so they had the more hard times, and I didn't want or need for anything. We weren't wealthy by any means, but I didn't want or need for anything. And I think when I look back, I say it was very disciplined. My father, the colonel in the Army and this sort of thing. I think he, behind the scenes, made things happen, you know, and kind of let my mom get the credit, you know, but she was probably the more strict than he was. Yeah, it was it's pretty interesting.
Actually, it's not even that surprising when you think about it. You know, he has 3 boys.
Daddy's
and
little
then he
girl,
has,
right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was very much that. My brothers weren't appreciative of that at all either.
Well, I'm sure they were. I'm the only boy. I'm in the middle. I have an older sister and a younger sister.
You're the middle guy.
So I was mama's boy as well.
Yeah.
You know, so
yeah.
she.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's absolutely nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong at
you
all.
know, and look how you turned out.
It's
turned out
debatable.
great.
Still up for debate.
So, do you have a favorite childhood memory? Something that you look back very fondly to?
Gosh, like I said, I had everything I could have ever wanted growing up. My parents sacrificed, and we lived in a great community. I think one thing that comes to mind, and it's not necessarily childhood, but in high school, winning a state championship. I think anytime you are a part of something bigger than yourself, it really resonates, and you kind of hold that near to your heart.
Which sports was this?
That was for softball.
Softball.
Yeah, a lot of regional championships growing up, but softball was the only state championship in my sophomore year.
Okay. And what is the toughest challenge you feel you had to overcome growing up?
I would say when I lost one of my 3 brothers. I wasn't necessarily a child, but it was I was 19, and so that was, you know, we had the perfect family basically, you know, so you don't expect a tragedy like that to happen. So I think that was difficult for sure.
Yeah. And how do you think that shaped you, and like how did that influence the person that you became?
I think obviously it makes you appreciate the people in your life who you love the most, and it's, you know, it's been a long time now, but it's easy to take things for granted, and so I think I definitely learned that. I still fall short of that sometimes, you know, we get in our own little world, but I think you appreciate the little things in life that you really miss when you don't have them anymore.
Yeah, I mean, it is in no way comparable, but being away from my family as well, you know, when I went home, there were so many little things that they will maybe argue about, not happy about, and for me it was so trivial, you know, because I think being here just made me appreciate so much more family.
That's similar.
And all that.
Yeah.
So I know when you're immersed in an environment, it's difficult to understand just how unique or what are some of the idiosyncrasies of that particular place. But can you now, in retrospect, think of what are some of the more unique things about where you grew up, that environment? What were some of the things that stand out as being very particular and different?
I'm probably showing my age a lot, you know, like the old timer sitting here. Well, back in the day, I grew up, obviously, with my father being in the military, so there was a lot of military in our community. Quantico was really close, a lot of FBI agents. It was that sort of childhood. And so all of my friends had parents who were kind of in the same situation. And so, you know, we didn't have the social media, and we didn't have all the, you know, we had Atari. You know, how fun is Atari? So you had to go, we went out and played, and if I was at somebody's house and somebody wasn't acting appropriately, that parent scolded us, you know, and there was no questions about that. I think my parents expected those parents to do that, and vice versa. So I think it was really unique, you know, just rolling out of bed on Saturday and going outside and seeing who's out and just playing, which I don't know that happens quite as often today. So I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, I think the part about it seems being raised by the entire neighborhood or community, that's something that I can speak to. You know, I remember neighbors finding me, you know, in situations where I shouldn't have been, and just handling it. Of course. Handling it and not worried about what my parents might say, not reporting even back to my parents. Just done.
It's just the way it was, and if they told you to do something, you did it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
So plenty of sport growing up, regional championship, state championship, national championship you mentioned, right? No, state championship with softball. So out of all the sports you played, why do you think softball became the one that you ultimately dedicated most of your life to?
Sure. I love all sports, obviously. That's kind of what I do with my life. But I think with softball, you know, I had the opportunity to play either volleyball or softball in college, and I wanted to go to James Madison. In those days, there weren't a lot of varsity softball teams. And, you know, all the big state schools in Virginia, they were all club teams. And so I decided not to go and play varsity softball somewhere so that I could go to James Madison.
Okay.
And there I participated in the club and was the president of the club and was kind of like a student coach sort of thing. And I think obviously because of that, I love volleyball. I played basketball as well, wasn't as good at that, but I could have easily played either and loved it and moved forward. But I think by being a part of the club at James Madison and being so involved, and I knew I wanted to coach, you know, my whole life. So
Oh, really?
I did.
So
yeah.
from the very, very early age, you knew. How did that come to be?
I don't know. You know, it's funny. You know, I always tell students now, don't worry, you have time, you'll figure it out. But I think from the time I was in 3rd or 4th grade, you know, at that time, you know, I knew I wanted to be a teacher, and I knew I wanted to be a part of sports and coaching, and so that was kind of the natural progression. But yeah, I knew from a young age. I loved my teachers. One in particular, you know, was a really big influence on my life, and you know, he made me feel special and made me want to learn, and I just knew then that that's what I wanted to do.
And you wanted to do the same thing for other people.
I did,
you know,
yeah.
To mold them in ways you were molded,
Yeah.
and to impact them
Yeah.
how you were impacted. That's remarkable. So then you go into college with the intent to become a PE teacher. What happens?
Well, it wasn't my intent to be a PE teacher. I ended up that way. I actually went to college as a biology major. Again, my parents had a lot of influence on me and my decision making, and they were saying, Michelle, you're not going to get a job. There's not a lot of PE jobs. You need to choose another subject. You can still coach, but you need to choose another subject where you can get a teaching job. And so I enjoyed biology, and so I started that way. And then my sophomore year, had to make my own decision probably for the first time in my life, and kind of branched away from what my parents had suggested, because I like biology. It wasn't passionate. I wasn't as passionate about that as I was being a health and physical education teacher. So I changed my major.
I mean, I know now, as we're talking about this, it seems like it was a decision that you just made and then moved on, but I cannot imagine it being, one, it needs a decision to make, and two, it needs a conversation to have with your parents.
Sure.
And it's certainly not something that our students now are foreign to. So
Right.
can you walk us through that process? Like, what were the guiding principles that embodied you and really made you feel so confident in that decision and that choice you were
Sure.
about to make?
I mean, I was such I know people might not believe this today, but I was a very compliant child, and so anything they said, that you know, that was gospel. That's what I did. And so I think it was just following your heart, you know. I mean, I liked it, and I knew I could finish with biology. Maybe chemistry might have gotten me though, but I think it was just really, for the first time, following my heart and doing something that I 100% knew would bring me happiness.
Yeah.
I knew that I wasn't going to be happy, you know, with biology. And I think, you know, having the conversation, my parents were probably a little bit disappointed, again, because they cared, they worried about my future, so that it was coming from a good place. But I just took a leap of faith and said, yeah, I'll find a job. You know, I'll make sure that I do that. And fortunately, it all worked out.
You did. So that leap of faith leads you to Wingate, or was it something in between?
Sure. Well, I was fortunate in my first teaching job. I was in grad school, and the man who was the athletic director at my high school where I went called and said, hey, we're opening a new high school. I'm going to be the AD. Will you come and work for me? And I said, well, can I teach PE there? He said, absolutely. Come in, sign your papers. So I did that. I loved it at Hilton High School in Northern Virginia, and I had also gone to the 96 Olympics in Atlanta,
Okay.
and I was young and probably not very wise at the time and thought Atlanta would be a great place to live. And so my high school principal's brother was a principal in Atlanta, but I didn't have interview experience. He
Okay.
set me up with an interview in Atlanta, and then in the meantime, one of the young women that I coached at Hilton was at Wingate playing softball, and their coach just left. And she called and said, I think you should apply. And I said, well, I'll go to Wingate and practice my interview for this Wingate place. I don't even know where it is. So that I can do well and move to Atlanta and continue to teach and coach in Atlanta at the high school level.
Yeah.
Here I am.
And the rest is history.
Yes.
Wow. So
Yeah.
like they saw the magic. Who interviewed you?
Oh gosh. Well, at the time, Dr. Murray
Okay.
was the athletic director. Dr. Moss, who's no longer here, was on that committee. Dr. Teague.
Okay.
Every time I see him, I blame him. You're the reason why. No.
I didn't realize
Yeah.
just how much we owe him. Like this is just so
That's what I say. That's what I say. Yeah.
So
big.
I mean, you in grad school, you are teaching at the high school, you coaching at the high school,
Coaching and teaching.
and then that's a big leap,
Yes.
right? Like on paper, it doesn't even seem like
Yes.
you should be getting the job. So
100% should not have gotten the job.
so what do you think did it?
I think, I think Dr. Murray, I'll always be indebted to her. She saw something in me that I did not see in myself, I think. And I just think things play out exactly how they're meant to be, and I was fortunate, that it did work out, because obviously I'm in my 24th year now, and
Wow.
Wingate has been really good to me.
Yeah, I mean, it seems that this idea of opportunity, for me at least, seems to be one of the biggest common threads here at Wingate, right? That the people here see in you, in your words, things that you can't even see yourself, and
Sure.
give you opportunities that on paper you don't even feel that you deserve, but yet, those mentors believe in you and give you all these opportunities. And I don't think that story of opportunities is one that's very unique to you. It's certainly the case for myself as well, and
Sure.
I can count so many other people that can speak to the same thing. This idea of, there is more to someone's story than a paper
just a piece of
or
paper.
yeah.
Yeah.
So then, softball head coach, winning culture. Tell us about that time. That the whole.
Gosh. Like I said, I was not prepared at all for this job. Coaching in the high school and moving and coaching here was very different. And so I relied on a lot of the people who were at Wingate at the time, and they helped me and mentored me and taught me the Wingate Way, pardon the pun, and just really embraced me and supported me in everything that I was doing.
Yeah. I mean, numbers speak for themselves with the phenomenal success that you've had with the
You're
team.
kind.
What do you think are the ingredients of a winning culture like the one you were able to build with that softball team?
Yeah, I think, and I think you and I have talked about this before. I'm competitive to a fault, and I do think that competitiveness can permeate any group that you're associated with. So I think that helped. I think the team. There was a couple years prior to me arriving where they had some good success, but the 3 years leading up to my arrival, I don't think that they were very strong, and I think they were eager for that, and they wanted to be pushed, and they wanted to get better every day, and they just bought in. It was because they wanted those sorts of things, so they really made it very easy on me.
Yeah. And I don't know the whole full story, but there is a story about the softball team and a coin, and like, what is that about? Like every girl gets a coin? Tell us about that.
Well, every girl gets a coin after their fall season is over of their senior year. So they basically have to make it through the program.
Okay.
And so the challenge coin started back in the military, and it was, you know, to form camaraderie and pride in your group or your organization.
Okay.
Or if you did something special, you were given a challenge coin. And my brothers were both in the Secret Service, and so I learned about the challenge coin. That was something that the Secret Service used as well, and I'd always see this thing, and they would explain it to me, and I thought, man, that'd be really cool for my team. And so my oldest brother, Tim, actually purchased some for me to give to them. So they had to make it through the program. And I would even tell them, if you end up leaving in the spring, you're giving this back. You can keep your t-shirts, but you're giving this coin back. You have to finish the program to keep this coin. Yeah. And it's been a really neat thing. And it's, you know, I see them at their weddings, and they're off and they're getting their picture taken and they're holding their coin and things like that.
So
it was a pretty
what's the
special
challenge? You said challenge coin. What's the challenge?
The challenge is you always have to have it on you.
Oh, so you
always have to have it on you. But in our rules, we did do a caveat that if you're in workout clothes, you know, because if you're going to practice or something, you didn't. But you're always supposed to have it on you. And so the challenge is your group that you were associated with us softball team. You would challenge your teammate to see if they had it on them. And so you would throw it down.
Okay. So
if you were on my team and I challenged you and you didn't have it, you would have to buy me a beverage of my choice. Okay. So if you did have it, then I would have to purchase you one.
So the only way to get a coin is to have played through, like, is there any other way I can become like an honorary member?
No, sir,
like,
I'm sorry.
All right,
No.
well, I think it was at least worth a try.
Pretty tough, aren't I?
Yeah, well, I didn't expect anything less. So how many years were you the softball coach here?
16.
16 years.
Yes.
Then you transition into an administrative position.
Yes.
That's another complete transition. What was the toughest part of that transition?
You know, I was an assistant AD and head softball coach at the same time.
Okay.
So I was still an administrator, but I think when I left coaching and went full-time into administration, I think the hardest part was, you know, y'all want to be a part of, everybody wants to be a part of a team, and my team were my colleagues, the other coaches, and I think when I transitioned there, you know, I felt like I wasn't a part of them as much anymore. They were going to look at me maybe differently. I felt that way.
Yeah.
I don't think that they were that way, but that's kind of how I felt. Like she went to the other side. She's one of them. You know, she's not one of us now. So I think I created that myself, but it was tough at first. Yeah.
I mean, certainly one could also argue that they have somebody in your position now who's been through the ranks.
Sure.
She understands what they're going through. She understands the challenges. She understands day to day what they have to face, and that, you know, she'll probably be a strong advocate for some of the things that they have because you understand it.
I think so. I hope so.
I'm sure
yeah,
that's how.
And I think it took some time, and I would do anything for our coaches. They're just awesome people.
So it's the same question, but it's a two-part. So the transition from high school to head coach at Wingate, what do you think you had to learn for that transition to happen? And now, what did you think you had to learn for the transition from head coach to AD?
I think just from coaching at the high school to college, a lot of it's the NCAA compliance. You know, coaching the game itself was not different. It was everything else that surrounded it. You know, at the high school, you're teaching a full day and then you go to practice. Here, you have all these other things that you need to be concerned about, and then you go to practice. So I think that was probably the biggest transition. And from being a coach into an administrator, I think it's you have to be able to see the big picture. You know, when I'm coaching softball, and all of our coaches, rightly so, they're tunnel vision. You're focused on one thing, and I think when you're an administrator, you know, I laugh, I say, how bright am I? I gave up one team and have 22 now, so you have to be concerned with the larger picture, I think is probably the hardest thing.
Yeah. And so in your new position then, I mean, we've won the Eccles Award 13 times now. That's correct, right?
Yes.
And so again, what are the ingredients? What are the ingredients of building an athletic department that is just so driven, so focused, and so dedicated to their respective craft? Like, how do we build that?
I think if I knew that, I'd be very wealthy. No, I think you're only as good as those that you surround yourself with. And I think we have amazing coaches in place. And then in turn, they've surrounded themselves with amazing student athletes. And it just kind of takes care of itself. You know, we don't really talk about winning. You know, we maybe talk about the process or doing things the right way, and the rest kind of follows. So I don't know the special ingredient, but I know that our coaches are really special, and therefore all of our student athletes are also very special. And I just think we have all the right people in the right places.
And how is it now then? What is your favorite part of not just being responsible for one team anymore, but having the opportunity to interact with all 22 teams? What's your favorite part about that whole thing?
I think it's just that, you know, I miss the depth of the relationships that you have, you know, that I had when I was coaching just the softball team. It's just a whole nother level. But I think the neat part is now I do have 22 other teams that I have the opportunity to associate with and to get to know, and it's just really rewarding, you know, when you get a thank you note. You know, I got one the other day, or at the end of a season, you know, there'll be somebody on a team that will just say, hey, thanks for what you did, you know, thanks for coming and supporting, and that's the good stuff.
And I imagine that's what keeps you going for.
That's why you get out of bed every day. It's for them, yes, for sure.
So I also know that you are the advisor for BSU, which on paper looks like a surprising match. How did that come to be?
A lot of things on paper aren't aligning for me, are they?
On paper, it doesn't seem like a likely match. But for those of us who know you, we know that surprise, right? That they chose you as an advisor.
Yeah.
So how did that come to be?
It just came to be. The president a couple years ago, Janae Davis, just came to my office and said, hey, you know, we don't have an advisor. We're looking for one. Would you consider? Yeah. And me being me was like, Janae, I'm an old white woman. Like, is this really a good idea? You know, I haven't walked in your shoes and, you know, those sorts of things. And she said, you know, our exec board talked about it and we think you'd be great. And that's kind of all I needed to hear. Of course, you know, I want to help. And when you hear a group of students who are so active and so involved and so awesome don't have somebody to lean on, you got to step up.
Our biggest thing in BSU is it's not only for Black students or Black staff or faculty, whoever it may be. It's someone who wants to be an advocate for our community and help us with what we want to do, what we want to see, the conversations that we have. It's important, I think, to always bring in different aspects than what you're used to or what looks like you. That's how you learn and that's how you grow. With Coach Caddigan, she is someone who is very passionate about things and students, and she puts aside the work part of things and she genuinely cares for us and what we need. And I think that's really important and why I've loved her being BSU's advisor and why now with the new BSU where I'm out, I strive to tell them, keep in touch with your advisors, let them know what's going on because they care and they want to help, but it's difficult for them to do that if they don't know if you're having problems or if you need that assistance.
So have you paused to truly think about why you? Like, why you?
It's a good question. I mean, I was humbled when she asked me, you know, I haven't really, probably in the depth that you would probably want me to, but I hope it's because those students know me and know that I would be an advocate and know that I would care about them and would support them and do whatever it is that they needed me to do.
Yeah. And what has this taught you about yourself, about our students,
A lot.
about this place? What have you learned?
I've learned that is one of the most dynamic group of young people I've been associated with. They're really, really special and very ambitious and very organized, and all of the programming that they do. I mean, I don't deserve any credit. They do it all. But I've also learned, obviously, there is a lot of bias and there is a lot of hate and discrimination, and being involved with the BSU and being at some of their meetings has really been enlightening and has helped me grow as a person. I grew up in, like I said, a really nice community, white privilege, honestly, that I didn't think of or realize at the time. And I think our BSU, especially the exec board, have really helped me to open my mind even more. I don't think that it was closed, but open my mind even more and try to understand and help, I guess, in any way that I can.
Yeah. So from that position then, where do you see, for us as an institution, where do you see the gaps that are still left to fill and things that we ought to pay a little bit more attention to or ramp up existing efforts?
Yeah, that's so hard, and we've had a lot of meetings and a lot of conversations about it. Look at what's just happened in the last couple days, and I think it's everybody's obligation to step in and to do their part to help positive change. And I think, especially with the BSU and how some of that group still feels on our campus, I think it takes all of us. It takes all faculty and staff to step in and have conversations, honest conversations, and be supportive and open our mind, even though we may disagree or not understand or not really relate. Try to open our minds to get to that point where we can understand where somebody's coming from, and then in turn kind of help support and make positive change.
Yeah, I mean, the conversation piece, I think for you to be immersed in those meetings and to get the opportunity to listen, and as you mentioned, truly revealing you to, your privilege, as a white person. And I think that's such an important piece. I think, people are somewhat oblivious, one, to the amount of privilege that they have,
for sure,
but two, oblivious to the implicit and unconscious bias that we all have.
Absolutely.
And if you don't understand that, whether or not you're a good person, whether or not it's intentional and unintentional, we all have biases that we have, and we have to check ourselves. Otherwise, they go unnoticed and checked, and we have the illusion that because our intentions are pure, that the impact doesn't matter.
Sure.
But it's
right.
not the case, right?
Yeah.
That regardless of what the intention was, the impact is the impact. So I think, having more of those conversations certainly, and exposing people to different perspectives certainly is a wonderful place to start. And yeah, I mean, I obviously it's not an easy.
No, it's not.
Topic.
But Wingate, we say we're a family, right?
Yeah.
And family means taking care of each other in whatever capacity that is.
Yeah.
It might be getting mad at each other sometimes too,
Absolutely.
but it's still caring for unconditionally, and so that's I think where it needs to start.
Well, I'm sure the students are very grateful to have you as an ally and as a support and as a mentor.
And I'm fortunate to be
as
with
I have
them.
been over the years. So let's shift gears. What do you do for fun? What do you do when you're not inspiring, motivating,
I go to
mentoring?
games. No, I don't have a whole lot of downtime, but I like to travel, like this summer. I like to play golf or tennis. I like to see my family. I don't get home often enough, or especially the little ones. I don't get to see them nearly enough, but yeah.
Is there a piece of advice that you find yourself giving students over and over again?
I don't know if it's necessary. Well, maybe it is advice. I just feel like they are so capable and so awesome. They just have to believe in themselves. And that sounds so simple, but it's true. It goes back to the very beginning where somebody sees something in you that you don't see in yourself. And I just see so much promise in when I walk around this campus. And obviously I'm with the student athletes in the BSU the most, but they're just so amazing and they don't realize it, you know. So if I can help them realize and have the confidence to believe in themselves, you know, they can do pretty special things.
Yeah. So in 50 years, when you finally leave Wingate, how do you want to be remembered? What do you want? Maybe legacy is such a heavy, big word, but I'm going to use it anyway.
Yeah,
what do you want your
it
legacy
won't be a
to
legacy. I think that I want to be remembered as somebody who cared, and somebody who, in some small way, enhanced their time here.
Yeah. Well, if that's what you want your legacy to be, I can tell you that you are doing really, really,
Well,
really
you're
well.
kind, Junior.
And it was an absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks.
And I'm sure everyone will lose their mind once we announce that you are our next guest.
Thank you. I
Thank you very
appreciate your
much.
time.
Yeah, thank you.